Do you end up having a tantrum in response to your child's tantrum? My name's Jodie Thornton, and today we're going to talk about what you really need to be able to respond to your child's tantrum in a way that really models the kind of emotional awareness that you're wanting them to develop when you're frustrated with their tantrums. So the first thing I want to talk about is that a lot of people, you will hear, like the vast majority of advice around handling tantrums is that you should stay calm. And in my experience, not just my own, but also in supporting my clients, I just don't think that it's possible for you to be able to stay calm with your child's tantrums no matter what. Even if you were like, let's say you were a Zen monk and you were able to like have no emotional attachment to experiences outside of you, we are biologically wired to respond to a person in distress, let alone our own child. Like, that's how we are wired. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to lose your cool in response, but it does mean that your nervous system is going to be agitated in response to someone else's tantrum unless you know how to handle it. Right? And so that first step is actually to get those tantrum whispering skills. So what you want to be able to do is help your child to calm down enough so that their rational brain comes back online. Help your child figure out what is actually underneath this tantrum. It's not about another episode of the television, or he's breathing my air, or she always has the first turn. It's not about any of those things. There's always something underneath of it. Is it connection? Is it autonomy and choice? Is it to feel like they matter? There's so many different things that could be underlying what they're talking about, but we need to be able to get beyond what they're talking about at the surface level and get into what's really going on so that we can solve the problem. And then the last piece of being able to do that is actually being able to solve the problem in a way that works for everybody. So if we get really skillful at helping our child calm down, we get really skillful at figuring out what the root cause is of the tantrum, and our solution is always to give our child something that they need, we're going to find that something is going to give elsewhere. So whether it's ourselves, whether it's we're giving our children what they need in one respect but not their other needs. So for example, they need more autonomy and control but now they're not getting enough sleep, or they're needing more connection but that means they're not focusing on getting enough nutrition. Like, there's all of these payoffs that we want to be able to get to a place where we can solve the problem in a way that gets everybody's needs met. And like, in a really bigger picture perspective, we want our children to be able to get their needs met while taking into account what's good for the environment and what's taking into account what's good for the people that are not in the room with us at any one time, right? So things like not purchasing from unethical places and like all this stuff, and that's way bigger picture and not something we need to worry about when our children are 2, right? But it is something that we want to get to in the end, is that they're really skillful at getting their needs met. And because the whole point of how we help our children handle their tantrums is not for us to be their feelings managers and then one day like they're supposed to just know how to take the reins of that when they're, old enough or mature enough. What we're actually doing is giving them the skill set and giving them the practice now. It's like they're on their learner's license for problem solving. We're there to support them, and then eventually they'll get their full license, like their full driver's license. They'll be able to solve their problems without us being there. And so that's ultimately where we want to get to. So where we start when they're small is, how do we make sure they get their teeth brushed? How do we make sure that everybody in the family gets what they need, not just the children or not just the noisiest wheel, the squeakiest wheel of the siblings, right? So we're starting with this idea that we need to be able to solve the problem that meets everybody's needs. And I know that that can seem unrealistic, but it is something we can get to with the right skills and approaches. So that's our first thing, is actually get those tantrum skills really rocking. Now, once you've got your tantrum skills rocking, you know how to help your child calm down, you know how to find out what the real issue is, and you know how to skillfully problem solve in a way that works for everybody that's involved, you still may find that their big feelings trigger your buttons, right? You still get your buttons pushed in some place. And now sometimes it's not actually the big feelings, like the tantrum itself. It can be, but it also can be just the process of problem solving can bring up, for those of us who were raised, imperfectly, because, back when we were kids, there wasn't such talk around feelings and problem solving or anything like that. We can have triggers around what does it mean for somebody to always get what they need. What will that do to a person? Will it make them selfish? We can get triggers around the times when we can't immediately solve our children's needs. We can get triggers around, are we actually creating a people pleaser because they're going to just accept that they can't get what they need and they're going to, they need to acquiesce to everybody around them. We can have so many different triggers come up. We can have triggers come up when they need something we needed when we were children. We can have triggers come up when they don't need something that we needed when we were children. We can have triggers around so many different things. And if we start to work on those triggers before we work on the tantrum skills, what we find is we're clearing a lot of baggage. You can help yourself not be triggered so much, but ultimately we're going to come back to that physiologically wired to respond to somebody in distress. We come back to that piece until such time as you feel confident that you can handle their distress, right? So we do the triggers second, and we really want to look at what is the trigger that's happening, and we have a look at what is the most appropriate strategy. So for some of us, the trigger is too daunting and we do not want to explore it. And in that case, what we can do is set up a parenting strategy so that they don't push on that button. Like if it's a particular need or if it's a particular behavior that your child has that is pushing on that trigger, we can find a way for us to actually stop that occurrence from happening so that your button doesn't get pushed. We can also find a way to disconnect that trigger from what's happening right now. So if we look at your nervous system perceives your child nagging you as something that reflects an experience you've had in the past, we can actually disconnect that. We can give your nervous system enough evidence that what is happening to you right now with your child is not the same as what happened to you in the past, right? And then all of a sudden we just disconnected it. So that baggage is still there, waiting for you for another day, but you don't have to deal with it in order to stop having it come up in your parenting, right? That's one option. And then the third option is we can just go in and have an exploration, see what the trigger's about, and see if we can heal the actual trigger itself and really unpack what that is. So that is an option depending on how much space you have and how much willingness you have to go there. We can totally unpack the trigger altogether. So that's our second thing. Our third thing is boundaries, right? Because when our children are having big feelings, sometimes it's because we have a need that is not immediately being met, or we have a lot of other complicating factors that are causing tantrum. But sometimes it's just that they're getting used to not getting their need met. And so sometimes by being able to have boundaries where we're saying to our children, we have tried really hard to get this need met, but we can't get it met right this moment. Sometimes it takes a while for them to get used to the idea that I'm going to get my needs met most of the time, but sometimes it's impossible. And when that happens, for us to be able to be okay with that, again, it can bring up some baggage, but also it's for us to get skillful around boundaries, to recognize that a boundary is not, I see a lot of us parents who were raised, so we were raised with the old school way of just don't have feelings, and then the new school way is feelings are always valid. For those of us in that situation, it's really common for us to we give a boundary, but what we want is for our child to say the boundary is okay. So we're basically saying no matter what words we're using, the energy that comes with it is, please, can you be okay? Can you see that this boundary is reasonable? It makes sense. I've been doing things for you all day and I just need this 1 minute just to finish this email, right? You can see how that sounds like, please, can you be okay with me needing this boundary? And that is not anybody else's job, let alone a child, but it's not anyone's job. But most of us have not been taught how to have boundaries. We have not been taught how to deliver them. We have not taught how to be comfortable with them. We have not been taught of how to deal with our children reacting badly to our boundaries. We also haven't been taught how to handle when our children take our boundaries really personally. And all of those things are absolutely learnable, but most of us just haven't come across what does that look like in practice. So if we look at what that means, like to really not have a tantrum when your child's having a tantrum, we want to build your skills to be able to handle their big feelings. We want to build your toolkit around your triggers. So whether that's disconnecting them from what's happening right now, whether that's actually creating what I call it parenting around it, so that we create a circumstance where the trigger just doesn't happen, or we actually can unpack that trigger. And then the last thing we want to do is that getting really comfortable and skillful with boundaries. And for many parents, we just need one of those pieces, but some of us need all of them. And, you know, that's totally okay. And it makes total sense based on what was the parenting advice that was around when we were kids. It makes total sense that us as adults are exactly where we are right now, trying to understand feelings, trying to validate them, but it's kind of hard because we've been given a lot of clear advice on what not to do. But when our children are upset, most of the advice is just be okay with that. That's just kind of normal. We're not given those in-depth emotional regulation strategies. And so this is what we want to do to unpack that. So if these three things are what you need in your parenting, I would love for you to book a time to have a chat with me about whether you'd like to join my Confident Connected Parenting course. In this course, we go through all three of those pieces. We're really going to come into this place of how do we unpack what's going on for our children and understand, not as like a blanket of me telling you what's going on with your child, but building the skills for you to moment recognize what is happening with your child and what can you do about it. Helping you to unpack those triggers, and then finally getting really skillful and comfortable with boundaries. So if you'd like to jump into that course, you can find all the details at jodithornton.com/confident connected parenting. And if you'd like to book a chat to just see if it's the right fit for you, you can book a conversation with me at jodithornton.com/15, so the number 15 for a 15-minute phone conversation. Thanks so much for watching.